Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad and our live launch coverage of SpaceX HTS-113BT, launching from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. We're just waiting for SpaceX to begin their live broadcast to get those live views of Slick 40. But if it's your first time here, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the launch pad, and we're glad to have you joining us here. Here at the launch pad, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And as always, take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. I know we got people tuning in all over the world. First, Tony, thank you so much for kicking us off with that £2 super chat there. We appreciate your support. People tuning in all over the world. We got Windbreaker in Arkansas. We got Valerie is in France. We have David in Michigan. Amy's also in Michigan. I see Poland, New Zealand, California, Maryland, Wisconsin, UK, Russia, Korea, Germany, Wales. Great to have you all joining us here. Let us know where you're watching from as we count down now. Just about 15 minutes and counting till launch, and we are expecting SpaceX to begin their live view for today's launch broadcast. Today's Falcon 9 booster is booster 1067, going for its 17th flight after previously supporting CRS-22, Crew 3, Turkasat 5B, Crew 4, CRS-25, Eutelsat Hotbird 13G, mPOWER-A, PSN Sateria, and 8 Starlink missions. SpaceX's autonomous drone ship, just read the instructions, is stationed downrange in the Atlantic Ocean, ready to recover today's booster. Now, SpaceX does have a 2-hour launch window here today, but as propellant load is well underway, they are now committed to today's launch attempt. But should they have to delay for any reason, they do have a 4-hour window that opens tomorrow at 12:53 p.m. Eastern time. But today's weather is looking great for a launch, with greater than 95% go for launch with current weather conditions. Now, as we continue through the countdown here, now currently sitting at about T-minus 12 minutes, we are awaiting SpaceX, who said they were going to start their stream at T-minus 15, but we have not seen that as of yet, but we will patch them in the moment that we do. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live to the best of our ability. Also, take a moment, make sure you engage that like button, share out the stream, and invite people to join us as we continue through today's countdown. We have SpaceX going live now, so we're going to patch them in, and we'll run through a little bit about today's payload. Today's payload, HTS-113BT, is a new high-throughput satellite telecommunications satellite in C-band and Q-band for the PT Telecom Satelit Indonesia Company, a state-owned digital communication company in Indonesia. We've got SpaceX live here, so we are going to patch them in, and we'll listen into SpaceX Mission Control as we continue to count down to the launch of HTS-113BT, or Mera Putih 2, from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. As we continue through the final minutes of the count, let's listen into SpaceX Mission Control.
Hey everyone, it's Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, and you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 awaiting its 3:11 p.m. Eastern Time launch from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. My name is Soumi Srivastava, and I'm a responsible engineer for the Falcon Heat Shield here at SpaceX, and I'm joining you from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Welcome to our live launch coverage of the Mera Putih 2 mission for our customer, Telkomsat. Today's launch marks SpaceX's 16th mission of 2024 and its 311th to date. The Merah Putih 2 mission will strengthen connectivity over the Indonesian archipelago and will accelerate the deployment of digital infrastructure in Indonesia by providing satellite-based backhaul and enterprise services. We'll have more to share about today's mission later in the webcast. At T-minus 10 minutes and 15 seconds, let's learn a little bit more about the Falcon 9 that's supporting today's mission, which is flying for its 17th time today. On the pad today is Falcon 9, a two-stage rocket that's designed and manufactured by SpaceX for the reliable and safe transport of people and payloads into Earth orbit and beyond. It's the first orbital-class rocket capable of reflight. The entire vehicle stands around 229 feet tall, or about the height of a 21-story building. The bottom two-thirds of the vehicle is the first stage, which is also referred to as the booster. And the booster is responsible for accelerating the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere and into space using 9 M1D engines, and then separates from the rest of the rocket. The number 9 in the name refers to those 9 Merlin engines that power Falcon 9's first stage. The engines are named after the Merlin, which is a species of falcon. And the photo you're seeing now are these 9 Merlin engines that are just like the engines responsible for getting today's payload to orbit. Not only is the first stage the largest part of the rocket, but it's also the portion of the rocket that we attempt to land on one of our autonomous drone ships or back on land for future reuse. Today we're planning to land on the drone ship, just read the instructions. To date, we've landed Falcon 9 274 times. And reusability is super important as it allows us to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drives down the cost of access to space. Above the first stage is the second stage, which has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine that ignites after the first stage separates. And that second stage is what will carry Merah Putih 2 into orbit. Speaking of the payload, Merah Putih 2 arrived in Florida in late January, and since then, the teams have been integrating the spacecraft to Falcon 9's second stage in preparation for launch. The payload is safely enclosed inside of the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is the large barrel structure with the pointed nose on top of the second stage. The fairing protects satellites on their way to orbit and are jettisoned approximately 3 minutes into flight, and the fairing is made of a carbon composite material. The fairing halves supporting today's mission are both flight-proven, with one half flying for its 10th time and the other half flying for its 11th time. And after separation from the second stage, both fairing halves will return to Earth and will be recovered by our recovery team. At T-minus 7 minutes and 44 seconds, Falcon 9 is tracking no issues and the payload is healthy. Falcon 9 has been loading propellants since T-minus 35 minutes and will finish loading at around T-minus 2 minutes. The range is ready to support and weather is green for our mission today. And if for some reason we don't launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow at 12:53 p.m. Eastern Time. For now, let's learn a little bit more about today's mission and the payload that's on board Falcon 9.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. T-minus 7 minutes, 7 seconds, and counting till launch of today's commercial payload mission for the Indonesian telecommunications company. As always, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering you live. We just had call out there for engine chill. Those 9 Merlin 1D engines are now beginning to cool down in preparation for ignition. To give you an idea of today's mission's timeline, of course, we'll run through all the normal events of Max Q, MECO, stage sep, and all of that, all the way to first stage landing. But with it being a customer mission, we are highly sure we may get to see payload deployment. We're waiting for SpaceX to confirm that. Following first stage landing, the second stage will have a second burn. That second burn is going to last just over a minute. That'll begin 27 minutes, 59 seconds into flight. And then payload deployment of the one satellite on board, 33 minutes, 34 seconds into flight. So we hope that you'll stay with us live for that payload deployment if SpaceX does. And we'll be answering your questions through that coast phase. But we'll be also answering them there as we continue the countdown now, just 6 minutes till launch. Chelsea, TLP Space is better together with you. Thank you so much for that super chat, and it really, really is. We believe that, and we're glad to have so many of you joining us here from truly all over the world. I see lots of England, I see Florida, I see Houston, Texas, I see Georgia, Arkansas. Great to have so many of you joining us here. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, and invite people to join us, as we are at T-minus 5 minutes, 30 seconds, and counting till launch here today. We'll listen back in to SpaceX Mission Control for the final minutes of the count.
Video from our customer Telkomsat. Next up, the transporter erector, or TE, will retract away from Falcon. That's the large truss structure you see there standing next to the rocket. First, we'll see the clamp arms open up around the second stage, and then the TE will begin to pull away from the rocket slowly. At T0, ground hydraulic systems will pull the TE even further away from Falcon 9 as it lifts off. The first stage is connected to a launch mount at the base of the TE, but the structure is hinged and will retract from the vehicle in preparation for launch. You may also hear it referred to as a strong back from the launch team when you're listening to the nets. We use the TE to roll the rocket out to the pad and raise it to its vertical launch position.
Strong back lower has started.
We should have a view of the clamp arms opening up in a couple seconds from now. There you can see them opening up. The TE also routes the vehicle's fluids, power, and telemetry umbilicals from the ground systems to the rocket and payload until Falcon 9 goes on internal power and clears the pad. Also in the next few seconds, we should see the strong back begin to recline away from Falcon 9. At this point in the countdown, both the first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of RP1 kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Both first stage and second stage should finish propellant loading about a minute apart from each other. The first stage finishes up at around T-minus 3 minutes and a few seconds, and the second stage at T-minus 2 minutes. The white clouds you see around the vehicle are the chilled gas above the LOX tank that we vent overboard to maintain pressure inside of the tank as needed. When that water comes out into contact with the humid, moist Florida air, it condenses into that cloud that you're seeing.
Close out.
At T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 will be in startup, and that means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. And then, just inside of T-minus 2 seconds, we'll light the M1D engines for liftoff. Merah Putih 2 continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. The weather is still looking green, and the range is ready to support our T0 of 3:11 p.m. Eastern Time. And with that, we are proceeding into the last few minutes of terminal count.
H2 LOX load, close out.
Good call out for second stage LOX load completion, and the white cloud that's venting is venting from the TE LOX line, and that is totally normal. In about 30 seconds, we
Ground gas closeouts.
be sure that F9 is in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup. Go for launch.
We just heard from the launch director that all systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with the Mera Puti 2 payload. Now let's sit back and watch.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Go Falcon. Go Falcon. Vehicles pitching down range.
At T plus 30 seconds and counting, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, carrying the Mera Puti 2 payload. During ascent, we tilt the engines, also known as gimbaling, and that turns the rocket horizontally in what we call a gravity turn. In a gravity turn, the vehicle is still going up, but now we're also heading horizontally away from the launch pad. Moments ago, we throttled the engines down in preparation for max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Max Q.
Just heard, we had max Q, and the rocket typically needs to go 17,500 miles per hour horizontally in order to avoid being pulled back down to Earth and get into orbit. So keep an eye on the Stage 1 telemetry that's at the bottom of your screen. Now we have 3 events coming up in quick succession, starting with MECO, or main engine cutoff, stage separation, SES-1, or second engine start 1. And that's coming up in around 30 seconds from now.
Vehicles on the nominal trajectory. Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
And there you heard and even saw those 3 events that happened back to back, which were MECO, stage separation, and second engine start 1. Coming up next will be fairing separation. That's in about a minute from now.
Impact gear pressures are nominal.
We have some really beautiful views from space. You can see the grid fins have deployed on the left-hand side of your screen on the first stage.
Fairing separation confirmed.
We just saw fairing separation, and we'll be attempting to retrieve these fairing halves again today once they fall back to Earth with our recovery vessel, Bob.
Both vehicles are on a nominal trajectory.
It's now T plus 4 minutes and 20 seconds into today's mission. Just past the T plus 6 minute mark, you should see on your screen the first stage entry burn. To start the entry burn, we'll relight 3 M1D engines, starting with the center engine, known as E9, followed shortly by the E1 and E5 engines. And it's similar to pumping the brakes to slow down the vehicle as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. We need to slow down to reduce re-entry forces, which then helps us recover and reuse the first stage. During the entry burn, Falcon 9 is decelerating by firing its Merlin engines, but we're still moving really fast, and this causes the vehicle to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases, which are also known as the plume, and this deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle surface. And that soot comes from the carbon-based fuel, the RP1, that Falcon 9 burns, and with each flight, the soot builds up a little bit more on the outside of the vehicle. Oftentimes, prior to launch, you can see that soot on the first stage as it's sitting on the pad. We have a really awesome view of stage 2, and you can see on your screen it's still picking up speed, and as it heads to its destined orbit.
Both stages are on a nominal trajectory.
Entry burn on the first stage is coming up in a couple seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS is safed.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
So on the left-hand side of your screen, we have stage 1. You could see that it really decelerated as its speed slowed down. Reusability is key to lowering the cost of spaceflight, which enables more investments in critical scientific research. The Falcon 9 first stage that's supporting today's mission will perform this entry burn for its 17th time, having previously supported missions like CRS-22 and 25, NASA Crew 3 and Crew 4, and Turksat 5B.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance. Stage 1 transonic.
The Merlins on the first stage are optimized for sea level and achieve 190,000 pounds of thrust each during ascent and entry. After liftoff, Falcon 9's first stage has more thrust than 5 747 airplanes at full power. The MVAC engine, with a much wider nozzle, is optimized to 220,500 pounds of thrust in vacuum.
Stage 1 landing burn startup. And the next shutdown. Nominal park orbit insertion. Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
And there
Stage
you
1
have
landing
it.
confirmed.
That landing marks SpaceX's 275th recovery of an orbital-class rocket, including first-stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. We still have one more burn of our second-stage engine before we're ready to deploy Meraputi Dua today. In a moment, we'll be going into coast, and we'll see you back here at the T plus 27 minute mark for the relight of our MVAC engine. But before we do, let's take a deeper dive on how Thales Alenia Space is growing the network.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. 9 minutes, 15 seconds into flight. You saw another beautiful flight there by Falcon 9. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. Make sure you stay with us through payload deployment. We're just about 23 minutes away from that. Rare occurrence where we get to see payload deployment on a Falcon 9. If you haven't yet, make sure you also subscribe so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth. Looking at the week ahead, we got a few more launches on the docket that we hope you'll join us for. We have Starlink 7-15 launching on Thursday from Slick 4E at Vandenberg in California. We have Starlink 6-39 launching from this same pad back here on Saturday, February 24th, and we are counting down to some more launches later this year, this month. We've got a Soyuz coming up that we may or may not be able to see, and of course we're all counting down to that final Delta IV Heavy and that next Starship IFT-3. SpaceX currently targeting March 8th as the earliest date for that next Starship flight, and we're of course going to be following along with that. We are also now 2 days, 2 hours, 27 minutes, 30 seconds away from Intuitive Machines' IM-1 lunar lander attempting to touch down on the lunar surface. You can follow along with updates on that live tracker here on the launch pad. But 10 minutes, 35 seconds into flight. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live. We are keeping the live view up here. They're playing through a video about the Indonesian satellite, but it has some beautiful copywritten music, I'm sure, on it. So we're going to be answering your guys' comments and questions as we count down to payload deployment. We do have one more burn of that second stage. You can see it on the kind of wheel on the bottom of your screen there. SES-2 and SECO-2. SES-2 expected 27 minutes, 59 seconds into flight. That burn lasting 1 minute, 4 seconds. Prior to payload deployment, expected 33 minutes, 34 seconds into flight. We're catching up on the chat. You can keep sending in those comments and questions. We'll work on answering those live today. Saw some people saying it was an absolutely beautiful, clear day today. It really was. They had more than 95% chance of launch, so that was really, really great. Chimp 6, I was in the mood for a launch today. That is awesome. Glad to have you here. Joe Dog, that looked a little spicy and slick. I hope the Octograbber can get in it soon. Yeah, it definitely looked a little rocky there on the drone ship. Hopefully that they'll be able to get that Octograbber and straps in there to secure the booster before hopefully we don't have what happened a couple of months ago with 1058. Fox Gamer, is the NORAD ID out today or the 21st for this satellite? It's hit and miss on how quickly those come out. They are normally pre-identified, but keep an eye out for it. It should pop up on there, hopefully in the not too distant future. I think it's D is asking, sorry, when is the next Starship launch? Elon was in a X Space earlier today, and he was saying they're currently hoping somewhere around March 8th, but that can slip. He said the first half of March for sure. And then they said, depending how things go, the next ship and booster are basically ready, so they're hoping for a short turnaround to IFT-4. T plus 12 minutes, 50 seconds into flight. We're awaiting payload deployment of Telkomosat Mira Puti 2. We're answering your guys' comments and questions. You can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. I also want to say a big thank you on behalf of the entire TLP crew. We were absolutely blown away, hitting 250,000 subscribers overnight. Thank you so much for all of your guys' support. We wouldn't get to do this without all of you. It's been an incredible 2023 and an incredible kickoff to 2024. 500,000, I guess, here we come. I think that's the next one people count to. So we're appreciative of each and every one of you being here and picking us as kind of your launch watching service providers, and we're excited for lots of things in the works for this year. All new website, all new app, and more. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Oh, I'm gonna say your name wrong, and I'm really sorry. Louis. I'm sorry if I'm saying that really wrong. Member for 10 months. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. If you're wondering why people have helmets next to their names in different colors, that all depends on how long they have been a TLP member, and you can become one of those for just 99 cents a month. You get access to some of those awesome TLP emojis to use during streams, and you get that great TLP helmet next to your name that counts how long you've been here. We're going to be rolling out a 3-year and a 4-year helmet in the near future as well, because it's amazing that some of you have been here since the very early days, and we're going to start needing those, so we appreciate you. B. Hansen is asking, what is the payload? So on board today's payload, what we're waiting for deployment, is a HTS-113BT, which is a new high-throughput satellite telecommunications satellite in C-band and Q-band for PT Telecom Satellite Indonesia, a state-owned digital communications company in Indonesia, for its orbital position at 113 degrees east. It was built on a Thales Alenia Space's historic space bus 4000 B2 platform, and this satellite will provide more than 32 gigabytes per second capacity over Indonesia. The satellite weighs about 4 metric tons at launch, and is expected to have about a 15-year life expectancy. Looking at the stats for this year, this was the 35th orbital launch of 2024, the 16th for SpaceX this year. This was the 302nd Falcon 9 mission in SpaceX's history. Be amazing to see SpaceX pass that 400 number quite easily, it looks like, this year. Jessica, gold is GOAT. Is gold the next one you're getting there, Jessica? That's awesome. We appreciate you guys being here. Space Gamer, IFT4 so quickly, they're speedrunning Starship. They've got it ready. They've already got upgrades from 3 to 4 on the ship and the booster, so they will hopefully be able to turn those around quite quickly. I think their hope would be less than 60 days between the two, depending how IFT3 goes. It also depends on what investigations need to be done and a lot of those different things. So lots of stuff still has to happen. Keep in mind, they're also limited to only 5 Starship launches per year still from Starbase. So they want to speed run it, but they also don't want to speed run too fast that they run out of launches. Or they need to see that license be amended. Catching up on the chat, has SpaceX had any failures in 2023 except Starship? Well, wouldn't consider it a failure. Yeah, Starship definitely not a failure. Successful failure. Test failure. But SpaceX did not have any Falcon 9 launch failures. They did not have any Falcon 9 landing failures. They did have a Falcon 9 recovery failure, where we unfortunately lost the beautiful historic booster 1058. When it fell over on the way back to port. The seas were looking a little rocky today, so I hope we don't have a repeat of that. But we will have to wait and see how recovery of today's booster comes back to sea. They know what they're doing. I'm pretty sure they'll secure it. But they did not have any failures in 2023. And I want to do the math. Going back, it's been a long time since we've had a failure during launch. Other than obviously the Starship test flights. The last time SpaceX had a Starship or a Falcon 9 failure, was back in, I believe, Block 3. I'm just catching up, confirming here when the last one we had was, because it has been a very long time. Block 5 has been incredibly successful. The last failure on records, scrolling through here, there's a lot of flights. We had a failure to land on February 16th, 2021, with booster 1059 on its 6th flight. That was the last landing failure. We had a landing failure on March 18th, 2020, and February 17th, 2020. That was booster 1048-5 and 1056-4. But we have not had a landing failure in the 2020 decade at all. Really quite incredible that they've had that long of a record here with this new vehicle. You're just joining us, though. Welcome here to the launch pad. We are T plus 19 minutes, 15 seconds into flight. We're awaiting a second stage ignition for a final burn. This burn expected to last 1 minute, 4 seconds. Just finalizing the orbit ahead of deployment of today's Indonesian satellite. Billy Bobble wasn't the last landing failure due to them trying to land in higher winds. I believe it was something to do with that. They were doing some new... pushing it a little bit further, which I mean they want to do. They want to have more flexibility in what they can do, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. I mean, the fact that there's consideration that the boosters, the engines, that were on booster 1058 when it fell over, some of them are damaged, but some of them might still be able to be used, which is really quite incredible. Haven, how do I get different colors? So if you become a TOP member, it starts at 99 cents Canadian, I think it is, a month. You can get that helmet next to your name, and then the longer that you're a member, your helmet color changes, and we really do appreciate your guys' support. T plus 20 minutes, 30 seconds into flight. If you guys have more questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad. Work on answering those live. We'll also invite you to join us over on the TLP Discord. That's where our community hangs out in between streams. I know we got Adzi and Thunder hanging out in general chat doing a watch party for today's launch. But we're glad to have you all here. We might pop in there and say hello to you guys a little bit later today, as that's where our community hangs out in between launches, talks about space news, rocket news, and just all kind of space science and tech. We're going to take a very quick commentary break here, but we hope you'll stay with us as we count down to that SES-2, that second stage burn expected to begin 27 minutes, 59 seconds into flight for just about a minute there ahead of payload deployment, 33 minutes, 34 seconds. Stay with us right here on the launch pad.
awaiting the relight of our second engine, coming up in a minute from now. This burn, called SES-2 or Second Engine Start 2, will last about a minute. It's been a great launch so far, and Falcon 9 successfully lifted off from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, carrying Merah Putih 2 at 3:11 p.m. Eastern. Stage separation happened around 2.5 minutes into flight and was followed by the successful landing of Falcon 9's first stage on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. At around T+8 minutes, we had successful second engine cutoff, or SECO-1, and that was followed by confirmation of good orbital insertion. Coming up next, we'll be waiting for SES-2, confirmation of good orbit, and then we'll be entering about a 4-minute coast phase.
And back ignition.
So we just had confirmation of second stage burn of the MVAC engine on the second stage. And before we go to coast, let's learn a little bit more about today's mission. Telkomsat has chosen the Thales Alenia Space as the prime contractor of the satellite for on-ground delivery and making it in charge of early orbital positioning and in-orbit tests. Built on the Spacebus 4000 B2 platform, Merah Putih 2 will provide a capacity of more than 32 gigabits per second and a service life of 15 years. This is Telkomsat's first satellite with multi-spot high throughput technology, or HTS.
And back shutdown.
Merah Putih 2's HTS technology will provide broadband internet services with more capacity than conventional non-HTS satellites currently available in Indonesia.
Nominal deploy orbit insertion.
So we just had confirmation of second engine cutoff and nominal orbital insertion, which is great news. We'll be back in a few minutes for the deployment of Merah Putih 2.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are coming up to T+30 minutes into flight, just 33 minutes. The payload deployment expected 33 minutes, 34 seconds into flight, so just 3 minutes from now. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, and subscribe so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth. You can see today's payload there on your screen as it prepares for deployment and activation for Indonesia. We've been following along. The payload is now in its deployment orbit, with that last burn now being completed, and we are now just 3 minutes away from Merah Putih 2 being deployed, and then that company taking it online. We'll answer a couple of last-minute questions, so you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. Again, looking forward to the week ahead for launches. We hope you'll join us back here on Thursday, February 22nd at 11 p.m. Eastern Time for Starlink 7-15 launching from Slick 4E in Vandenberg, California. And then on Saturday, February 24th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Starlink 6-39 launching from the same pad that we saw launch here today. You can follow along, of course, over on our Discord to get launch notifications and live stream notifications. We're also tracking 2 days, 2 hours, 6 minutes, 30 seconds until landing of Intuitive Machine IM-1, the lunar lander on its way to the lunar surface, entering lunar orbit today in preparation for that historic first American lunar landing since Apollo 17. 31 minutes, 34 seconds into flight, now just 2 minutes away from payload deployment. The second stage now currently 460 kilometers in altitude, traveling over 35,000 kilometers an hour. It is in a stable orbit in preparation. The satellite may change its final its orbit following deployment, but this is at least its deployment orbit. She was 32 minutes into flight. If you haven't yet, make sure you stay tuned on our X account or Discord to see some of the photos captured by our TLP rocket chasers. I know Joe and Gavin, some of the others were out in different regions across the Space Coast today, so make sure you stay tuned for those. And check out over on the Launchpad store, our brand new TLP print shop is now up and running. We're still adding more prints every day, but you can now catch yourself a poster, a canvas, or metal prints, all on one page. Some great options there. And if you use promo code LAUNCHDAY, you get 10% off of your order. So make sure you grab one of those and add some space TLP rocket chaser space prints to your wall, and they make great gifts as well. T plus 32 minutes, 45 seconds into flight, now just about 45 seconds away from deployment. We'll listen into SpaceX Mission Control for confirmation of deployment.
The 17th landing for that booster.
Payload separation confirmed.
An awesome view and confirmation of payload deployment of the Merah-Putih 2 satellite. And with that, we've got confirmation of a good deployment.